$115 billion. That is the amount of cash OpenAI now expects to set on fire between this year and 2029, according to internal projections leaked to the information. The previous figure was $35 billion. So, in the space of a few months, somewhere inside the most valuable private company in the world, somebody quietly added $80 billion to the burn pile and hoped nobody would notice. Somebody did notice. And the reason this number matters, the reason it might be the single most important figure in the entire artificial intelligence industry right now, is not the size of it. It is what it reveals about every promise Sam Altman has made to investors, to partners, and to the public over the last 3 years. Because the gap between what OpenAI is spending and what OpenAI is earning has stopped looking like a startup growth phase. It has started looking like something else, something the financial press has been hesitant to name out loud. If you want to understand how this story ends before the rest of the market figures it out, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next 12 months are going to decide whether OpenAI becomes the most valuable public listing in history or the most expensive collapse since the dot-com era, and you are going to want to be early on either side of that question. Now on paper, OpenAI is doing fine. The headline numbers are dazzling. Annualized revenue crossed $25 billion by the end of February 2026, according to the information, up from roughly $6 billion at the end of 2024. ChatGPT has 900 million weekly active users. There are more than 9 million paying business customers. That is faster than Salesforce, faster than Snowflake, faster than any enterprise software company has ever scaled. By every metric that gets repeated on stage at investor dinners, the company is winning. But revenue is not profit, and growth is not survival. And the deeper you look into the actual numbers OpenAI has shown its shareholders, the more you start to understand why CFO Sarah Frier has reportedly been excluded from some of Sam Altman's financial planning meetings. Let's start with the losses. Internal projections reported by the information show OpenAI losing around $14 billion in 2026 alone. That is roughly triple the company's losses from the year before. The cash burn is projected to more than double to over $17 billion next year, then $35 billion in 2027, then $45 billion in 2028. Add it up and you get the $115 billion figure. The company does not expect to turn a profit until 2030, a year later than its previous estimate. Microsoft's own public disclosures, reported by the Register, revealed that OpenAI lost $12 billion in a single quarter, between July and September of 2025, $12 billion, in 90 days. From a company whose CEO told reporters at a dinner in August that the business was profitable on inference. That is an extraordinary thing to say about a company hemorrhaging more cash per quarter than most countries spend on defense. And here is where the story gets uncomfortable. Because OpenAI cannot fund this on its own. Nobody can fund this on their own. So a system was built. A system that, depending on who you ask, is either a brilliant piece of ecosystem coordination or one of the most elegant pieces of financial engineering Silicon Valley has ever produced. The mechanism works like this. NVIDIA, the chip maker, announced in September 2025 a commitment of up to $100 billion in OpenAI. OpenAI then takes that money and uses it to buy NVIDIA chips. CFO Sarah Frier herself acknowledged, in remarks reported by multiple outlets, that the NVIDIA money will go back to NVIDIA in GPU purchases. Microsoft has invested approximately $135 billion in OpenAI. OpenAI has committed to spending $250 billion on Microsoft Azure cloud services. Oracle signed a $300 billion cloud deal. AMD granted OpenAI warrants for stock at near zero prices, and OpenAI agreed to power its operations with AMD chips. CoreWeave, a cloud provider that itself is partly owned by NVIDIA, signed a deal with OpenAI worth up to $22.4 billion. Then NVIDIA separately committed to buying $6.3 billion of unsold capacity from CoreWeave. You see the shape of it. Money goes in a circle. The same dollar gets counted as revenue at 3 different companies before it lands back where it started. Bloomberg called it a circular deal pattern. Michael Burry, the hedge fund manager who famously shorted the housing market in 2008, has been less polite. He has been writing on social media that the entire industry is hiding behind accounting tricks, and he has openly compared it to Enron. His exact phrase about end customer demand was that it is ridiculously small and that almost all customers are funded by their dealers. Then he asked a question that has been quietly haunting the industry. He asked who OpenAI's auditor is. And that brings us to the single most uncomfortable fact buried in all of this. OpenAI is a private company. It does not file with the Securities and Exchange Commission. It is not subject to the same disclosure requirements as NVIDIA or Microsoft or Oracle. So the public has no audited view of any of this. What we know because of leaks to the information, because of Microsoft's regulatory filings, because of fragments that bubble up from the cracks in the wall. What Microsoft's filings have shown us is troubling enough on its own. On January 29, Microsoft's stock plunged roughly 12% in a single session, erasing $440 billion in market value, after the company disclosed that 45% of its $625 billion cloud backlog is tied to OpenAI. 45% of the entire cloud backlog of the most valuable software company on earth, riding on a private company that loses $14 billion a year and has not reached profitability in a decade of operating. Then Oracle. Oracle's stock plunged 30% in the third quarter of 2025 amid investor concern about whether Larry Ellison's company can actually deliver the 4.5 gigawatts of compute capacity it has promised. OpenAI. Barclays downgraded Oracle to underweight and warned that the credit rating could approach junk status if spending continues to outpace revenue conversion. To fund the OpenAI commitments, Ellison has reportedly outlined plans to raise between $45 and $50 billion in 2026 alone. The whole edifice is being held up by debt. Morgan Stanley estimated that of the $3 trillion expected to be spent globally on data centers between 2025 and 2028, roughly half is being funded by private credit, half of $3 trillion. Going into infrastructure to serve a customer base that, according to one analysis cited by NPR, includes only about 3% of people who actually pay for AI services. Now, defenders of the model will tell you this is how every infrastructure boom has worked. They will tell you the railroads were built this way. They will tell you the internet was built this way. They will tell you that demand will catch up with supply, that the data centers will be full, that the chips will be utilized, that the loans will be repaid. And they may be right. They have been right before. But they have also been spectacularly wrong before. In the late 1990s, telecommunications companies built fiber optic networks based on the same logic. Equipment makers loaned them money. The carriers used the loans to buy more equipment. Revenue projections kept climbing. Stock prices kept climbing. Then demand failed to materialize at the expected pace. The carriers could not service the debt, and the entire sector collapsed. WorldCom, Global Crossing, Quest. Some of those companies were caught engaging in capacity swaps, selling each other rights to network capacity and recording the transactions as sales, even though the deals largely canceled out. Bloomberg drew the comparison directly in March of 2026. OpenAI, of course, insists this time is different. And to be fair, the demand for AI services is real in a way that fiber capacity was not in 1999. But what nobody at OpenAI seems eager to discuss is the math underneath the growth story. According to a leaked projection reported in late April by The Information, OpenAI expects its $20 a month ChatGPT Plus subscriber base to fall from 44 million in 2025 to about 9 million in 2026. That is an 80% decline in the company's flagship paid product. The company plans to make up the difference by growing its cheaper, ad-supported ChatGPT Go tier from 3 million subscribers to 112 million in a single year. A 3-6-fold increase in 12 months. As one analyst pointed out, even if that miracle happens, the math on the revenue still does not work out. So, this is the picture. Subscriptions to the premium product collapsing. A bet placed on a cheaper product that has to grow faster than any consumer product in history. Hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure commitments locked in. A circular financing structure where a downturn in one node could cascade through the entire system, and a CEO who has reportedly missed internal revenue targets multiple months in a row going into 2026, which is exactly what Sarah Friar has been saying behind closed doors. The Wall Street Journal reported in late April that OpenAI's CFO has been pushing for tighter spending discipline and has expressed serious reservations about the company's plan to go public in the fourth quarter of 2026. According to the information, Friar has told colleagues that OpenAI is not ready to meet the reporting standards required of a public company, and that she is not certain the slowing revenue growth can support the commitments Altman has made. The two of them issued a joint statement calling the report ridiculous. But the reporting also indicated that Altman has been excluding Friar from certain financial planning conversations, and that she stopped reporting to him directly last year. When the chief financial officer of a company stops reporting to the chief executive officer, that is not a personnel arrangement, that is a structural admission. The IPO is the deadline that decides everything. The company has roughly $600 billion in future spending commitments, by CNBC's count, and only enough cash to cover a fraction of that without a massive new injection of capital. A public listing at the rumored $1 trillion valuation would solve the problem. A delayed or downsized listing, or one that prices into a market that has finally started asking hard questions, would not. And the market is starting to ask. Anthropic, the rival founded by former OpenAI researchers, has reportedly hit roughly $30 billion in annualized revenue and is being valued in talks at around $900 billion. Anthropic's enterprise share, according to data from Ramp Economics Lab, has grown from around 10% of combined OpenAI plus Anthropic spend at the start of 2025 to over 65% by February 2026. 65%. In 13 months, Sam Altman declared an internal code red in December 2025 to respond to the competitive pressure, according to multiple reports. Which is, again, an extraordinary thing to declare about a company that just raised $122 billion at an $852 billion valuation. So here is where you, the viewer, get to decide what you believe. One version of this story says OpenAI is the new Amazon, that the losses are an investment, that the circular deals are a feature, and that the IPO will mark the moment artificial intelligence becomes the foundational technology of the next century. The other version says OpenAI is the new Pets.com with 1,000 times the leverage, that the circular financing has obscured a demand problem the market has not priced in, and that the entire AI capital stack is one missed earnings call away from a 2002-style correction that takes Microsoft, Oracle, Nvidia, and a long list of others down with it. The thing that decides which version is correct will probably happen in the next 12 to 18 months. It will be either an IPO that sails through at $1 trillion, or an IPO that gets delayed, or a quarterly disclosure from Microsoft or Oracle that finally forces investors to model the downside. The fuse is lit. The only question is how long it burns. If you want to be there when the answer arrives, subscribe and turn on notifications. This story is about to enter the chapter where the numbers stop being projections and start being verdicts. The question for you is simple. Do you believe the demand is real, or do you believe the financing is the demand? Either way, somebody is about to get exactly what they deserve.